All right, here we are. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Of Like Minds video podcast. Have a super special guest in today, Mr. Conrad Contreras, product manager, product and growth marketer at LinkedIn, based in San Francisco Bay Area, graduated from UCLA, former student body vice president, dancer, and recent homeowner. Conrad, thank you so much for coming on today.
No problem. And yes, thank you for having me. I am a very special guest to you. I know.
You absolutely are. Well, first of all, how are you doing today? Um, Still working full time during the pandemic. How has just been balancing life for you been as of recent?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm working remotely, obviously, like every day.
Mhm.
And before the pandemic, I always wanted to work from home. It's just nice to have that flexibility. And I was like, if I could work from home all the time, I would. But now thinking about it and like being stuck at home like every day and not having the option to go back to the office, it kind of takes a toll on you a little bit. So it's
Mm,
hard. It's hard. So, I think I am still productive and I'm able to, do the fundamental stuff, like meet with people and get the work done. But I do miss like seeing people doing that commute, like, what kind of makes life like living versus just like waking up, going to your desk, working, and then like not having any like breaks to do anything. Cause it's so easy to just go from sleeping to working to cooking dinner and then to working again versus before, like there were all of these breaks and commutes. So it changed, the routine a little bit, and it doesn't feel as good as I expected to be, but I am
mm,
excited. Hopefully, like I'm hopeful that there's gonna be a vaccine and we
mhm.
can all go back to normal and hybrid model. It doesn't have to be working from an office all the time, but maybe it could be like a split.
Yeah.
So overall, feeling good. I think today was good, but it is a little bit different to be working in a remote setting all the time and trying to live life without being outdoors and socializing with people.
Mm, absolutely. I think you definitely hit it on the head just talking about how we've basically gone from, working, having those spaces to like now having to work from home and not ever really gradually getting there, just kind of flipping the script really quickly. And I think something that really hits home for me is, you and I met at school, and I feel so badly for, if anyone's, for those that are tuning in and
Mhm.
listening that are still in school, whether you're in elementary, middle, high school, college, especially investing in all that money. If you can just talk about maybe your thoughts and just, like education and where it's at, and especially with higher education, like most of the experience is outside the classroom, and now like people are gonna have to learn from home or like through Zoom. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
just where education's at right now and having to adjust with COVID?
Yeah, I think first, I mean, thankful that people are still able to get an education because of technology,
Mm,
having access, to um, things like Zoom and a laptop, and being able to still get that and not really like block an education or a full year or 2 years of education because of not being able in a physical classroom. So I think first of all, like super good and grateful for that. I will say that there is a piece of missing out there. Whether you're in high school or you're in college, you most of the learning that you do in those schools, like you're not going to remember, y equals mx plus b, or the quadratic formula like x equals negative b plus or minus a squared and b squared minus 4ac. Can't believe I still remember that. But like that's the, most people won't remember that. But what you
Mhm.
do learn from these um, from school, from even just like hanging out during recess or lunch, is like how to be social, how to treat other people. And you start to learn about the way people tick and um, it, the way other people communicate and how you fit into that. So there, people will be missing out on those two, but I also feel like that there's a way for people to get creative in this virtual environment to
Mhm.
continue to do that. Although it's not ideal, um, I don't think that people should just do like watch TV all day and like go study. I think that there should be creative ways to like socialize and to make use of the time that you're not going to have. Like, I think that this whole year was so unique.
Mm.
And at first it was like very, miserable. And it was like, what the fuck is this year? But now that I think about it, this is probably, hopefully, the only moment or the only year in our life where life is like this. And you can learn so many lessons. So I reposition it in my mind as like this is like a different level in a game. And
Mm.
so this is a side quest, and you have to get the most out of it. You have to learn, um, and whatever you do here can affect your standing or your performance in the game of life. So even though that there are some blockers, like in the education system, or whether like you're just working, I think there is still something to do during this time to learn so many things about yourself and the way people operate.
Absolutely. And this is more kind of hindsight's 2020, but if you can just go back to, let's just say this happened in 2011 when you and I were going to school.
Mhm.
Do you think you would have invested in higher education knowing you weren't going to get the UCLA experience that you would have expected? So if it was like you have to virtually learn, like do you think you would have went to UCLA or would you have gone to a different route? Like what do you think you would have done if this had happened when you and I were going to college?
Yeah, I think I still would have. It's funny because during that time, we weren't really thinking of UCLA as the way, or college as the way we think about now. Like now in hindsight, we know like all of the things that we learned, the social, the communities that we've built. But during that time, we saw college as like a traditional way to succeed in life. And whether or not that's going to be a campus, at least like thinking about UCLA, like of course you're still going to go, of course you're still going to try to like get an education and get that degree. Being on campus does not really change that goal of trying to get that degree so you can get a good job. Now knowing that like you learn on college in college without the academics portion of it, like yeah, I definitely still would have. And I probably, because I was just so um, extra and overachieving during that time, I would have joined every club that I have and been virtual and like, let me get to know you. Let's do other stuff so that by the next year or in 2 years, whenever the pandemic ends,
Mhm.
I've done stuff so that it sets me up for success in those other years.
Mm.
So I think I still would have, because of the degree, would have just invested in social circles a little bit more. Definitely a different experience, but the answer to that is absolutely still go and like get an education.
That's so
Because the
interesting.
pandemic doesn't stop life. Like it,
Yeah.
it continues on. Like 4 years later, you're gonna have to be expected to have a degree, to have a job, and to like survive adulthood. So why change all of that because of this one stupid ass of a year? So
Mm.
um, I would say like think a little bit long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just more so thinking just the investment, the tens and thousands of dollars that, a lot of us go through to invest in that. And I was just thinking more so being more cost effective and being like, okay, like instead of obviously
Yeah,
UCLA is a great school, maybe just going online or maybe going to CC or something just more cost effective during the time
yeah.
being. I didn't know if like that was something you'd be open to, or like you had just mentioned, you would have just went to UCLA regardless and taken that opportunity.
I mean, during that time, I had just had UCLA was my dream school. Like my
Mhm.
freshman year of high school, I was like, I'm getting to UCLA. And I always look 5 years ahead. Like every time I reflect back on like 5 years ago, what was I thinking and where did I want to be? I always want to make sure that like when I reflect, it's exactly how I painted it to be. Maybe a different route or approach, but like I want it to be there. And like UCLA was one example, was when my freshman year of high school, I like just remember hearing about UCLA and I was like, I'm getting there, I'm going there. Um, so I would say that like I think that pursuing an education can be different. Like you can definitely go to a community college, you can definitely pursue something different, but do something. Like don't just, because of it pandemic, don't just like stop anything. So it really depends on the person. Like I was privileged enough um, to be able to get a scholarship and, get that
Mm,
UC Region scholarship. And so financially, there was the privilege there to be able to attend,
mm,
and not having to think about costs. So I think regardless though, like any option is doable. Like people can get to success in different ways. For me, I just took that route because it was the most straightforward for me and what I really wanted and what I set my eyes to be. And fortunately, I had the resources to get there.
absolutely. And you talked about it, and I've always known you to be this and always looking 5 years ahead. And I remember even during our years at UCLA, you just always speaking about what you wanted to achieve in 5 years. And that's always kind of been you. And if we can just go back a little bit, and if you can maybe just take us, during those, I guess, middle school, high school years in terms of working
Yeah.
towards getting to UCLA and
Mm.
what that was like. And obviously, you excelled and did really well, in
Thanks.
academia. And if you can just talk about what that was like at the school you're at, navigating through those circumstances, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, it's so different. Like I would say, like in middle school or even elementary, like I wasn't thinking about UCLA. I knew I wanted to go to college, but
Mm,
your goals change as you learn more information. Like I don't think somebody should
mm,
be like, "Here's my 10-year plan, and I'm going to stick to that," because in 5 years you're probably going to learn something new that's
mhm,
going to make you want to shift course. So
mm,
the reason I say that is because when you said like, "What did you do in middle school to like kind of get there?" is that I didn't even know anything about UCLA in middle school or elementary. I grew up in the Philippines.
mhm,
So growing up in the Philippines, I only knew one thing, and that was to go to one of the schools that my sister went to. I knew I needed to
mhm,
do well in academics so that I can get to that next level and get to the best schools. But UCLA, whatever I'm doing right now, was not in the vision at all. But I knew that I wanted to like succeed, so it was always having that vision. So I worked hard. I obviously studied. I had tutors. Again, so I was had so much privilege to have tutors in the Philippines. And then when I moved to America, that kind of all changed. Like the education system was different.
mm,
The way you got to college was different. There were different tests. The standardized tests were so centric to the American experience that like most immigrants would have no idea how to answer those literary questions, like those reading
mm,
comprehension questions that were so centered on how we think about life from a United States or Westernized standpoint.
mhm,
So I had to make that adjustment. I had to learn. It was a very steep learning curve, but my goal was to always, in my head, I always wanted to make sure that like by the time I graduate out of college, I would be independent. Like I would be able to support myself, support my family, and be comfortable. And I always had that on top of whatever milestones I need to get, whether it's UCLA, whether it's the nonprofit that I was working at, and whether it's like where I'm working now, LinkedIn. I
mhm,
always have it on like in my head, like I want to be able to be comfortable and to be able to provide for my parents when they're old. So
mm,
that was like my true north. And all of the stops in between, going to America, graduating from high school with high GPA, going to UCLA, getting elected vice president, and then like now moving into like my adult life. None of that was really like in my like plan,
yeah.
but they happened as I went by, and I'm like, okay, 5 years from now, this is where I want to be, and just work towards that.
Mm,
So it's fixed. It's good to always have it in mind, but it's also not fixed. It's very dynamic where it can shift in 3 years, and that's okay,
yeah.
as long as you have like confidence in yourself, that you're gonna get there and you're gonna do the work to get
Mhm.
there.
Absolutely. And you're in this interesting position, when your family immigrated here and talking about how you had these privileges of, having the resources like tutors and all these the support at the same time, you were also complete culture shock, having to adjust, your way of learning the education system in the Philippines and adjusting to what it's like here. If you can just talk about what that adjustment was like a little bit more in depth, maybe just some of the difficulties, some of the things that you found easier
Mhm.
because of your previous training, and then how that ultimately materialized in the classroom, in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up really like privileged in the Philippines, but that privilege doesn't translate in the United States. Like maybe that
Mm.
gave me a head start because we had a little bit of money. But like me having tutors in the Philippines doesn't mean that I get to have tutors in the United States. It's
Mm.
completely different. The currency conversion is completely different. Like
Yeah.
just because we were, quote unquote rich in the Philippines or like comfortable,
Mm.
in the United States, we really weren't. We were strapped.
Mm.
We had shelter, we had an apartment. I had my family together, but it wasn't the same. So I also had a shift in terms of like all the resources that I was getting. Didn't have tutors, didn't have maids, didn't have all of these things that I used to think was so normal. And then I moved to the United States. And it's actually like, oh my God, we're so poor. Like this is like and like you can't just get these things easily. Um and that was like, as much as it's kind of like weird to say, like, I grew up really privileged, that was a real experience that I had where moving here was just like, oh, okay, like life is different. And I think many immigrants, probably from the Philippines, felt that way, where they were so comfortable in the Philippines and then they move here and it's like, wow, we just take 3 levels down from a socioeconomic level.
Mm.
But then we take into consideration how they treat brown people. We take into consideration being Asian American and what that does to you. So then there's all of these layers now in the lens of like being an American that affect your success in this country. So for me, I wasn't thinking about that in high school, but in hindsight, those were all factors that were
Mm.
affecting my growth, and my success, and just even being able to survive. And it was tough. I think like when I moved from the Philippines, I was expecting to meet other Filipinos in high school and be like, kumbaya,
Mm.
like, yay, amazing, we're all like friends and good. And gosh, totally opposite. Everyone was like, wow, fresh off the boat, we don't want to be friends with you, we don't want to help you out. And it was very isolating. Like I think to come from a
Mm.
really good school in the Philippines and to feel like I had so many friends, and in a way felt like I was like at the top of the social circles, now it's like, oh my gosh, like all of these different things, no matter how good I am, will affect who I am, will affect my success in this, because everyone cares that you're brown, everyone cares that like you're not rich, everyone
Mm.
cares that like even within the Filipino community, you might be gay, and you might have like an accent. So all of these other things now
Mm.
came into play, and I was like, holy shit, like my trajectory has just changed. But for me, it was always about being resourceful and trying to find where I can always grow as a person. So even if there were all of these things that felt like was a blocker, um, it was a mix of like kind of sometimes delusional confidence. And then the other one would be like um, just accepting that this is where you are right now, but you can always get better one step at a time to
Mhm.
get to where you want to be. And so when I was in high
Mm.
school, I was like, by my senior year, I want to be in ASB, which is like your student government. And to
Mhm.
get there, you have to be like really popular and you have to know how to like talk to people in like social circles. I also want to be at the top of my class. I want to
Mhm.
have these Filipino friends that I like that I'm seeing that are kind of looking down on me right now.
Mm.
And looks like everyone that has a car by 16 years old. I want to have that too. So I had all these 4 things, and like it wasn't like I was like calculating every day to get there, but I worked extra hard. Like I was like
Yeah.
watching TV shows. How did people communicate to each other? How did people
Mm.
um, build these relationships? And what are the right things to say? Like all human communication was so different. Like
Mm.
I had no idea what like apple on the eye meant. And like people would be saying these things in slang, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like steep learning curve. So I had to learn all of that. And I knew like I had to like consume media and talk to other people for it. The ASB stuff, like I was kind of working on different pillars. And then by my senior year, I got there, and I graduated top of my class.
Mhm.
I was in ASB. I all my best friends graduating were like these Filipino, um, so funny, but like these Filipino girls, like we were all kind of like a group
Uh-huh.
that like stayed friends forever. Like it felt like I like checked every box, and that was great. Um,
Mm.
but it wasn't just me like saying like I got there by myself. Like it was first the help of other people, it was a little bit of confidence that I needed, and just like delusional a little bit, like just being like, okay, I got this, I got this. I'm gonna run for student government. And like nobody knew who the hell I was. But my freshman year, I was like, I'm gonna create flyers, I'm gonna do all of these things. And I got the position. Like I
Uh-huh.
was like, just shoot your freaking shot. So it
Mm,
was a combination of that and then like the people around me, and I was able to get there. But for me, it's always keeping a North Star in your head, because if you don't have that, then you don't know where you're going. And that might not be your forever goal, but you have to know what your North Star is,
mm,
so that you can, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, um, drive your behavior towards meeting that. That's always been my thing. And then now to this day, like when I got to UCLA in 4 years, I was like, I'm going to be external vice president. Got
mhm,
there. When I was graduating from college, I heard about this cool nonprofit, Green Lining Institute. I was like, I'm gonna get there one day. Got there, and then as I started meeting more people in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I started seeing people work at LinkedIn, and like LinkedIn is a really cool company. I was like, how do I get there with where I am right now? I was like, I hopefully am there by 25. Got there right when I'm 25. And then I was like, I want to be a homeowner before I'm 30. Got
Okay,
there, and I'm
okay.
20. So I'm like, I'm trying to like,
Yeah.
I'm saying like, I didn't know if it was possible. I like
Mhm,
had no clue. I wasn't calculating, but like it was on my mind, and I just wanted to do it. And it was just shooting my shot.
mm,
And the contributions of family, friends, your community, um, and your own skills, like it can get there. Like you always just have to like hold on to that, like anchor yourself on that one North Star.
yeah.
So I would say that that's what I learned from like my migration to where I am now. It
Mm,
wasn't it wasn't like I worked extra hard. Sometimes I'm lazy as fuck. Like
mhm,
I can't be like working hard all the time, but
yeah.
it was always having like it was always looking up and seeing this North Star. And that
Mm,
star could change, but like I
yes.
always had it.
Mm. If you can talk a little bit about that, I mean, I think I don't know if that was I didn't know about that the North Star that term until recently, but if you can just talk about one finding that North Star to being able to adapt and change with your obviously like you said the more information you learn goals change North
Mhm.
Star changes. If you can just talk a little bit about finding your North Star, how you've kind of dealt with okay like accepting like okay my wants are different, I'm going to cater what I'm doing to get there like differently. If you can just talk about navigating that, not getting so fixed and like I have to do
Sure.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at any moment that you have your North Star, do everything you can to get there. But once you start finding a I do this visioning exercise and like kind of see like what kind of person do I want to be? What lifestyle do I want to be living? And if who I am at one point is now obviously is now very different from like who I am now, and my values have changed, that will also change like the kind of lifestyle that I want, the kind of people I want to
Mhm.
surround myself with. And so when those things happen, then obviously that North Star changes. Graduating from college and me thinking about greenlining and that like public policy nonprofit, I was like, I want to do that. And then, I had this like North Star of um, um, being like a staffer in a governmental agency, and like being Olivia Pope from Scandal. People watch Scandal. Like there was always this like, ooh, I want to get there, and I like want to be impactful in that, and maybe work for the president one day,
Yeah.
or like be the chief of staff or the communications director of the president. That was 5 years ago. That's where I was headed. I was like, I'm doing this. I was like, I'm doing every single thing that I have, like every single thing that right now that I have needs to be contributing to that. One day I go to a dance team, I meet some really, really cool people that talked about
Mm,
their careers and their lifestyle. And I was like, wow, like I want that for myself. Like
mm,
I want that lifestyle, like working in tech, for example, like there's so much flexibility. No one is like looking at you and like, you have to be here 9 to 5. There's flexibility with vacations. There's so many great perks. And like, it really feels like they care about you as a person. Like obviously you're doing, work and labor for them. You're their productivity machine. But at the same time, you have control over how you want to live your life versus feeling like you're just stuck in this job. And that
mm,
really appealed to me. I didn't
yeah.
want to feel like I'm here in this job, I'm doing whatever I need to do, and like, this is my life.
Yeah.
And the one thing that tech companies are really good at least select ones, and ones that like are really good at doing this, like I would say Google and LinkedIn,
Mhm.
they have they have these perks, and they have this like culture of employees feeling really good about, like, we have unlimited vacation days, take it as you need to, no need to ask for like approval from HR. It's like, just like do it whenever you want. It doesn't affect
Yeah.
your paycheck at all. Take whenever days off you're sick, whenever days you're sick. Like, you're not constantly thinking like, hey, in order to live my life, I have to ask for permission. And
Mm,
that's what I really liked about that. And I was like, that's the kind of lifestyle that I want. I don't want to like be freaking stressed all the time. Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to be happy that way. And as soon as that I heard that, that ticked for me. And I was like, okay, I think I want to work for like a company like that. I think like,
Mm,
instead of now thinking of like, this is what I'm gonna be the president's chief of staff and communications director one day.
yeah.
It went from a career to a lifestyle and how I want to live my life and what's gonna make
Mm,
me happy. And then that shifted, and I was like, okay, goodbye, chief of staff or
yeah.
communications director of a president.
Yeah.
Um, how do I then work towards getting to a tech company with the experience that I have? I worked at a nonprofit. I've never worked at a tech company before. I've never done product marketing, never done growth marketing. Um, so I kind of just looked at the people who I want to be, like all the product and growth marketers in these companies, looked at their resumes, looked at the way they're positioning themselves on LinkedIn, and I was like, aha, there are things that I'm doing right now and I would have done before that can be applied. You know,
Mm,
they might not be one-to-one skills, but they're transferable.
yeah.
Being able to communicate, managing a group of people, and like bringing stakeholders together for a common goal. And it's
Yeah.
about reframing what you're doing in that context.
Mm.
So when I started to do that, I started shooting a shot. I started scheduling, you know, like applying for jobs, scheduling for interviews, got so many rejections. They're like, who the fuck is this nonprofit person applying for this like 3 years worth of experience tech role? And it takes that one person that believes in you. It's that like Lady Gaga saying, which is like, there might be 100 people in one room, and like, it takes one person to believe in you. Like, I
Yeah.
think about that all the time, because it took
Mm,
one hiring manager that also came from a nonprofit that was
mm.
like, I
So they
know
they
how
they
scrappy
can
you can be.
empathize. Yeah, yeah, they know.
They can empathize. They can also know that the experience that you have, because you're at a nonprofit, you are so you lack resources. You don't have the budget. You don't have the people to do the work that you need to. So you kind of wear multiple hats. And
Yeah.
what she was looking for was a person that can be scrappy, that even if there's not a lot of budget and resources, they can get the job done, and they can get a lot of things done,
Mm,
quality work. And she knew from her experience she had to do that when she was working in a nonprofit. And so I'm over here like applying to many jobs, but it took that one person that was like, I'm gonna take a chance on you.
yeah.
And I got through the interview. I was so intimidated. It was such a different environment. Shooting my shot, my hands were sweating all the time. Scheduling, like having these panel interviews, and people
Mm,
saying these terms that wasn't really familiar with.
mhm.
Um, until she made the decision. And you know, I don't know how many of the panel agreed to hire me or disagreed to hire me, but she's like, I'm, you know, called me, I'm taking you on, I'm very excited to have you, you've got a lot of potential. And that was it. You
Ugh,
know, I had no clue like what I was
yeah.
getting myself into, but I knew I wanted to get here. So
Mm,
I just like shoot my shot. I love like that term. I know people use it all the time as like a slang, to like even joke around, but shooting your shot works, as long as you
yeah.
do it with a lot of intentionality and awareness and grit, and like not giving up, and getting 100, probably 100 plus rejections from these startups, from these tech companies. I was like, I just want to get started, and
Yeah.
no one would take me, even if like I'm literally writing every keyword down, and I'm talking about experiences that would be great for you. And like, obviously they're like, why are we going to do that when we can hire somebody else who's worked at Google, who's done something similar?
Mhm.
And fortunately, you know, because of the relationship building, because of the connection that I made with this person, and just that special, like extra sauce, that whenever I was interviewing, I wasn't just being a regular person that like talked about my skills. I was like trying to connect with this person and who they are, as like somebody that worked at a nonprofit, was scrappy, and got to LinkedIn as well, because someone trusted them and gave them a chance. And
Yeah.
I catered my narrative and everything that like I was saying in her interview, and the way I like talked to her about this opportunity for like 2 months. It was a 2-month interview process to really like hone in on one candidate.
Yeah.
And I made it. And that's like a people skill. Like you,
Hmm.
whether it's corporate, whether it's your personal life, like you have to like talk to somebody knowing that they're special, that they have their own story, that they have their own
Yes.
experiences, that they're not like everybody else. Because if you do that, then you know what to connect, and how to relate to them. And that will
Yes.
create chemistry,
Yes.
and it can help you so much in life.
Absolutely. I think you hit it on the head there, Conrad. And just, talking, I think we've all always known, like, you have to diversify, you have to be, multifaceted in terms of just having a wide array of skills. And I think COVID has really forced a lot of people to just really learn really quickly, like, okay, whatever I was doing, if you were laid off, you're furloughed, whatever it may be, and you had to adjust and pivot and switch. Um, and you just talking about it, you being a living example of making a career, and it's something you had, didn't have as much experience necessarily directly related to that, but you had skills that were transferable, you had experience in other realms that could actually help because you have like that outside perspective. If you can just talk a little bit more about that, I think a lot of us right now are in a point where we are pivoting, where we are still figuring out, not really knowing, okay, we know this is, COVID and the pandemic is here, but what's it going to be like moving forward and what skills are going to be more valuable? So if you can just talk about and just
Mm-hmm.
more of just, how to pivot, maybe that self-assessment and like what things that the viewer, whoever's tuning in on this, that they can kind of apply to themselves to hopefully pivot and find their North Star and
Yeah.
thrive and search for a lifestyle rather than just like a 9 to 5 job making, just ends meet.
Yeah. I mean, this is cliche, but you can really do anything that you want. And most people that get into their new roles probably don't know what they're doing until they get to that role. So when you're in, whether it's like a job interview or whether maybe it's like, I don't know, a dance audition, it takes
Mhm.
some skill. You obviously have to reach some, a required competence level. Like sometimes overconfidence is not going to get you there. Like you need a combination of competence and confidence.
Mm,
But oftentimes what stops people from shooting their shot is feeling like, I feel like I'm not, qualified for this, or I'm not experienced for this, or even if I have the number of years experience, it doesn't sound like it's really transferable. And you have to like cancel that part of your brain and like, as I mentioned before, like kind of be delusional and like for a minute be like, I got this. I have it. I'm better than all of these people. Because when you go into like an interview, nobody really knows if you're going to be good at your job until you do your job. It's
mm,
always a risk.
yes.
Whenever that's the same with dating. Whenever like
Mhm.
you date somebody, you don't really know until like you're actually really deep in the
Yeah.
relationship that like, okay, this works or this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I would say like that's the same thing for job. Like I've hired for positions, in my, the different companies that I've been in, where I hired someone who was super excited because they seemed like they had it all together. They were great on paper, but then they didn't really deliver. And then there were people that like weren't really good interviewers, but then they freaking delivered. And so like just get yourself out there, like be visible and show up. And like even if you just have to like hype yourself up to yourself and to the people that you're talking to get yourself your foot in the door and like seat at the table, do that first and then you deliver. And that's the most important thing, is that like you can get access by like that confidence,
Yeah.
but make sure you deliver so then you can be successful in that. Because if you don't do that, then you'll go back to square one, because people are going to be like, oh, like you were all talk, you didn't do
Mhm.
it, you didn't do all of that. So um I would say like it's always going to be like learning. When I got this job, it was never about like me knowing how to do the job exactly and like me being fast at it. There was always going to be a learning curve anywhere
Yes.
you go. Even if you're doing the same job at a different company, it's always going to be a learning curve. So know that there's always going to be learning, but as long as you deliver and like you have a little bit of confidence in yourself to get you there, um, you'll be good. I
Mm,
would say that the skills that I like, the headlines for me is in terms of like the skills that would get somebody to do a pivot. Um, they're not like hard skills. You don't have to be analytical. You don't have to be like calculating. You have to be a really great relationship builder and have a good sense of people so
Hmm.
that you can see who the people are in your life that's going to get you there. And even if it's just a hiring manager from afar, how can you relate to them? So good sense of like how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
It's overstated, but it really takes a lot of intentionality to get right. And then the
Absolutely.
second is self-awareness and like a high level of confidence in yourself to get you over that initial anxiety
Yeah.
to do what you need to do. So I would say those are the two things. You don't need a 5-year plan. Like you just need those two things and like shoot your shot.
Absolutely. And you've talked a little bit about, you wanted to be an ASB and that in high school. And we'll get more deeper, in your journey into LinkedIn kind of post grad. But something I did want to talk about is your time and your tenure, at UCLA being external vice president. And I think, the last elections in 2016, you and I shared a bottle of wine over FaceTime or Zoom. And I remember you and I, we're not gonna get political here, but we drank a lot.
Mm,
And we
yeah,
were talking again right before the elections of this current year. It's 2020 at the time recording this podcast. And just if you can just talk about that journey, and you obviously knew what you wanted, and just
yeah,
talking about what that beast is like in terms of politics at the collegiate level. Whatever you can share, just all the
yeah.
fun stuff.
It's so crazy. I mean, as you know, like it's crazy talking about it because it really was such a different world. And like who I was during that time, I felt like is so different from who I was before and from who I am now. Not because I transformed in any way, but because you really have to have a certain persona. And in a way, you do lose friends. You do lose a sense of who you are to be in that kind of position. So
Yeah.
um, it's interesting. And like, as a freshman in college back then, I was like, when I said I wanted it, I didn't really know what I meant by that. Like it was kind of just like I saw this person, her name's Joelle Gamble. I was a
Okay.
freshman and she was the EVP during obviously her fourth year.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what she really did. I knew she was like a leader, but the way she presented herself, the way that people looked up to her, the way that she was so sure of who she was. And at the same time, she was impacting and changing people's lives on an empowerment level, but
Mm.
also on a policy level and creating change. And to me, I was like, I didn't know what the specifics are of being an external vice president was of like the federal, state, and local responsibilities you had. I saw her as a freshman and I was like, I want to be like her. And I
Mm.
think that's what happens in your life. And like, that's why when people get to where they are, they might say like, it's just, I'm just here. But anytime you're showing up, whether it's the way you carry yourself or whether it's your identities and like people are proud of you, it does create like that representation does create a ripple effect of people wanting to be in that position and empowering them to do that.
Mm.
So to go back on like that story, I was like, I want to be external vice president. And like, I wasn't sure if I was going to be it, but I was like, it was kind of like wishing for like blowing on a candle on your birthday. Like, I wish this happens.
Mm.
And it did. And like, again, having that North Star, I wasn't trying to like, I wasn't doing every single thing that I needed to do to get there, but somehow my relationships and my like North Star got me there. And at some point it became less of like I want to do this. And I actually, my third year, I didn't want to do it. I was like
Mhm.
being convinced by people to run um, because, there's just certain like, in order to like defeat certain candidates, in order to take over as a party or win as a party, they needed people who had spheres or other social spheres, and I was tapped to run for it, and it was a hard decision at that point because I knew what it did to my predecessors. It created a lot of depression, a lot of trauma, a
Yeah.
lot of breakups by the time they won or lost. Like it shakes up your life. So my third year, I was thinking, am I really willing to shake up my
Mm.
life, to shake up my relationships, living this comfortable life that I'm in? I'm dancing. I have really good friends. I was like best friends with a guy named Kevin Belisario. Like there was all of these things that like like, I was like, do I want to, in a way I wasn't thinking about giving it up, but I was like, it's going to disrupt it. And even though, like, even you, Kevin, you were like saying, no, like, you're going to be fine. Like, it's going to change. It changes. It changes.
Yeah.
Like, your entire, like, changes me, and it changes the way I see people and the way I treat people. And in turn, the way they see me and they treat me.
Yeah.
Um, so I won. That was a very emotional time because
Mhm.
majority of my slate, lost, and there was like a couple of us. So, we were the minority in a
Mm.
council. And back then it felt so personal to your community because it really was like Greek, like,
Mm.
the typical white Greeks in, college campus. That's the party
Yeah.
that they represented versus us who were like, cultural organizations. So in a way, there
Yeah.
was this like responsibility to your community that just felt more, it felt like it weighed on us really heavily, whether we won or lost. And it's so crazy what happens behind the scenes because that was just in a collegiate level. There's so much backstabbing. There's so many things behind closed doors, and all of these like things that like we see in TV and we assume that maybe other people are going through. After going through that experience myself, I'm like, I am sure it happens at an even larger scale
Mm.
beyond college, whether it's corporate or whether like it's our political landscape. And the shit that like we would be talking about, it's like, do we lose this vote to get this one vote? It was like very like I watched Survivor now. I've been binge watching Survivor. I watched it when I was young, but I didn't really appreciate it until now. And
Yeah.
it was like that. It was just a lot of
Mm.
like thinking long term. How do we, how do we build a relationship with this person so that they can vote in our favor? Like it became so transactional, and like I'm like, if you believe in zodiac signs, I'm a Cancer. I'm like, I really, really like, I'm sensitive as fuck. And like, I really cared about my relationships, and to start seeing people as oh, I'm gonna like build a relationship with this person so that they can be on our side, or like, um, like I need to show up in this way. I started living a double life where I was like,
Mm.
I needed to be somebody that like the campus and my party and the cultural orgs needed me to be versus who I really was.
Yeah.
And so I'm needy. Like I didn't have anyone at that point. Like imagine me being like, I had such great friends
Mm.
before I graduated. Moving into that role, it became so different for me because then you start mistrusting people, and then people see you differently. They're like, oh, like you're external vice president now. So, we see you a little bit different now. And so
Yeah.
the way people see you, like they put you on a pedestal, you can't make any more mistakes. And we were all like, what, 20, 21 years old? Like the
Yeah.
pressure that they put on people at that time, I was like, wow, like every single thing, even if it's just a word that I said, it like has this ripple effect that maybe like another cultural org will think of it as this, and then but maybe Samahong really wants me to say this.
Yeah.
There's just so many things to think about. So um, I would not do it again. But it was a great learning experience. And yeah, it was a little bit painful. Like I definitely lost friends. I definitely lost a part of who I was. And I would say
Mm.
my third, the last half of my third and my fourth year, um, I was like kind of calling up for help. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I needed people to be with me,
Mhm.
but I knew it was never going to be the same again. And I knew I had to just stick it out like until like stuck it like I just needed to like swallow it and graduate and then leave. And I left UCLA feeling so traumatized
Yeah.
because I I just didn't feel like I had, everybody was saying great things to me and like praising me, and like part of it is because maybe they really did care, but most of it is because they probably wanted another position
Yeah.
that I had impact in. And it was so transactional that like I didn't know what was genuine, a genuine
Yeah.
relationship no more, and as it didn't. And after graduating, I was getting all of these like 600, 700 likes on Facebook, and like it makes me think of our influencers today because it makes you feel like you're loved, right? Like wow, so much
Mm.
validation. And I had all of these people commenting on myself all the time. Wow, you're amazing doing all of these things.
Yeah.
After I graduated, where I didn't have any more use to these people,
Didn't get that
gone.
love.
Yeah, I didn't care
Mm,
about the likes, obviously, but it showed me like,
yeah.
wow, like even if there was 800 people that like were showing love, they didn't really like love me.
Yeah.
And I went back to like the relationships that I, really cared about before. And it took a while to heal those relationships. But they bring me back to like who I really was, to like break down whoever the persona I had to be for that 1 year. Um, and it took a few years to learn to unlearn and to heal from that. So I'm grateful for being able to do that. Some people
Yeah.
don't get over it. Um, um, but at the same time, I have empathy for people that go through public, having a public persona, because that can really like fuck you up in terms of who you are as a person and who's really there for you.
Yeah, and I remember you had this saying that we would always talk about. You'd always talk about. You always say like, "I have to be an ice queen," and I remember seeing you. I remember seeing you, and obviously we can talk about this now. But just like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you'd have to kind of like, all right, like obviously behind closed doors, of course you're harboring all this stress and all this pressure, and who's fake, who's positioning, who's trying to leverage their relationship with me. There's so much mistrust, like you had talked about, and you
yeah,
talking about like I just remember like it was like as soon as you would leave your safety of like at the time at your apartment or wherever you were living at the time, it was like
yeah,
go time, and it was really like a switch. It was just like whoa, like see like when you're chilling with the people that you can really trust, like when we just hang out with
yeah,
really close friends, it was different from when I was like, okay, we got to go out, we got to like there's a certain way that I have to carry myself, and there's a certain way that I like you even said like the words that you say,
yeah.
what you like on social media. This was what 2014, 2015, so 5 years
So
ago.
yeah, yeah.
The world is very different, but social media is so huge, like just all these things. And I remember you'd always tell me, I'm just like, yeah, that sounds like a lot. That sounds like I don't know why you
No,
want that.
and that's so true, like that you mentioned, like, ice queen mode, because like you know me, I like before all of this, I was like, all I wanted to do was play video games. I wanted to just
Yeah.
I wanted to just like hang out with friends and like you
Hmm.
go to McDonald's late at night, like all of these things that like we used to do, like that's me, like that's who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Now that there's this thing that all of a sudden, after I leave whatever secure place that I'm in, I have to like turn it on and I'm this different person.
Yeah.
And like that tears you apart, because then it's like having two different like bodies in a way. And like it starts splitting and you start to wonder, like, is that still me? Or
Mm.
am I becoming this way? And then you think like, how am I treating people? And then you start to mistrust. And like, because I'm so deprived of real human, like genuine connection, because I know that it's all a performance and a play outside. When I go back home and I don't have that, it becomes like a drug. It's like addicting. Like you're like, well, and then you start being paranoid, like, why are my friends not there for me? And then you start harboring those feelings and then think that like they're against you, because everyone is against you. And so it
Mm.
just affects your relationship. And like it was just so sad. Like, like I had multiple, people that I would go to, my best friends, like even Ria at that one point, like we started not being as close anymore because
Yeah.
she had to take on this Samahang leadership role. And
Yep.
I was this EVP. At the same time, we were roommates and we were drunk for the first 3 years of our college, like literally tied to the hip and best friends and
Yeah.
said everything to each other.
Yep.
And then for like 6 months, no contact.
Mm.
That like tore me apart. And like
Yeah.
it was one of those things, like, do I talk to this person? Am I going to be seen as like stupid by doing this? But no, if I do it, like, what is the perception that I'm weak? And that means like I can't lead anymore. And what if like other people hear about that? They'll like think that like I'm not fit to like lead. So I need to show up as strong as possible. It was all of these like back and forths in my head in terms of how I operate. And like, it was just sad. It was really sad because you just, um, you lose yourself. Like as I mentioned, it's just I think back and it's not who I am. And I wish I didn't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
But I know during that time there was no option not to take it seriously. It
Yeah.
was kind of like go time.
Of course. And, you know, and I think, you know, hindsight's always 2020. There's always, you know, we all say that we have no regrets, but there's always things like, I wish I could have done this better, could navigate this better. And everything happens for a reason. And I think, you know, just to kind of lighten up and get caught up to speed with, you know, where you're currently at, if you can just maybe take us a little bit to
Yeah.
obviously that super high volume of just, you know, with people, like you were extremely busy, and whether if you were like working towards like, okay, like positioning myself to like get
Yeah.
ready to take this position on, and then like actually like transitioning into that role, that I just remember just you, it was a lot. And I think
Yeah.
it was so strange because then I feel like it's like this you kind of like, I don't know if you, for those that are tuning in, if you ever like run, like get that runner's high, like after you finish, it's just like it feels great, right? And it's kind of like when you finish UCLA, especially for your last, you know, essentially 2 years when you were transitioning into EVP and then eventually doing the role. If you can just take us through the
Mhm.
post grad life and what that was like
Yeah.
ultimately leading you to LinkedIn and where you're currently at today. If you can take us through that journey from 2015 to, you know, essentially when you started at LinkedIn.
I love that you position it to be like maybe a high, but it wasn't high.
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying, but I if we're thinking about it like a marathon, I think I sprinted that entire year, and I left like as soon as I graduated, P-grad, or Filipino graduation at
Hmm.
UCLA.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't say bye to anyone. I
Yeah.
packed all my bags. Like I just didn't genuinely felt like everyone was against me at that point.
Yeah.
Like there was this feeling of like damn, I went from like having really really genuine relationships to like I don't have a place here, I don't belong here. And maybe that's not really the truth, but that's what I was feeling at that time because of my experience.
Yeah.
So I packed my bags, drove straight to the Bay Area
That
in my bags,
day?
listening to like, yeah, that day
Oh my
that's what I like. I
God.
did not say bye to anyone, like
Oh
even like
my
people
God. That's
who
right.
really really cared about me and like they were going to stay at UCLA for another year was like texting me like, hey, where are you? We should drink tonight. You just graduated. And I was like, I'm in the Bay Area. Like I left.
Didn't you just
And
graduate
they're
like 2
like,
hours ago?
and some people got upset by that. They're like, wow, you
Yeah.
kind of just like left us. But at the same time, I feel like I needed to do that for myself. I
Mm,
needed to escape that environment and who what
yeah.
I was like, I need to start over because like what just happened to me is
Yeah.
not okay. Like
Yeah.
I like just it was such a terrible experience.
Yeah.
So packed my bags, went to the Bay Area, tried to start, start my life, but like it wasn't like a high. Like it was very like trying to get over so many breakups,
Yeah.
um, romantic breakups. There was just so many things ending, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna start over. Let's go." And even though I had that attitude, it was still very painful. Like it wasn't like all dandy, and I was meeting people, and I was living that like new environment life. I'm going to happy hours and I'm kind of like this new 21, 22. I was 22 years old,
Yeah.
trying to like be an adult, didn't know what really to wear in the office and like how to
Yeah.
act around people. When people talk about their careers and like office drama, it's like what's appropriate. Like all of that stuff was like a little bit fun, right?
Yeah.
But there were moments of just like sadness. Like it kind of just like sinks in again. It's just like, damn, like who do I still have left from that chapter that I had at UCLA? And then at the same time, anytime I got reminded of anything that happened, in my senior year, anything like with happening in the office, for example, maybe I was having tension with a coworker or having tension with coalition partners. It reminded me of the time that I had at UCLA, like, being EVP back then. And I would just like break down. I would go to the bathroom and start crying. And I didn't know that this was a thing because I thought I was just like sad, but like a lot of people are saying that it could be like post-traumatic stress
I
disorder.
was
It's
just
like
gonna
it's
say,
like
like,
something that happened to you and really like fuck you up. You didn't even know it was fucking you up during that time, but then you start like feeling these feelings and anytime somebody talked to me about like that time, at least my first 2 years, I would always break down or I would always get really angry. And like, it was just this like, it was bad. Like I knew like at that point, it was like, it was a mental illness. Like I couldn't control it. I would like go on a ramble and say like, and still want to be involved and how fucked up it is over there. Like it just wasn't healthy. So I would say that I worked through that for like 2 years, and it wasn't a lot, some therapy sessions, also some like just getting to know myself and rebuilding relationships. And fortunately, like eventually I would say it took like 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
I don't really think about it in that way anymore. It's still, to think about it, like it's really sad, but it doesn't affect me the way it did anymore. Like I feel like I'm able to move past that now.
True.
And that's when my life, I feel like, really started. And I would say life was going on, but like life as an adult really started, where I didn't feel like I had shackles from my past. And I
Mm,
was building relationships, building new friendships. They didn't know who I was. They didn't see me as like Conrad EVP. They
yeah.
didn't see me as like Conrad as this person. They saw me as like who I was at the moment.
Yes.
And that who that person I was at the moment, I knew was the real me. And that felt good. Started building genuine relationships, and rebuilding relationships from, from UCLA. So yeah, really exciting. I think like being in a new environment helped that, and then
Mm,
just like my drive to like get out of a sad place
yeah.
and to like continue just like getting to where I want to be, and like that North Star for me, drove me to that. And yeah, I would say like the first few years of being in my early 20s in the Bay Area, exploring who I really was as a person. It's a different type of you. It's a different version of you, and that was so
Mhm.
fun.
Absolutely. And you kind of already kind of gave into shooting a shot and doing the research and figuring out, okay, like who can I identify the same way you did at UCLA, your freshman year when you saw the EVP and you're like, I want to be her. I love there's something about that presence. And you kind of did the same thing, working your way towards LinkedIn. And I
Yeah,
think LinkedIn, as we all know, and that a lot of us are probably on, it's from everything I've heard from you in previous conversations, it's a great company. And if you can just talk a little bit about maybe company culture and what makes it
yeah,
different from a typical 9 to 5. And also too, you talked about just little things like more flexibility with vacation days and especially in a time like I think now more than ever, we're all really being exposed to like, oh shit, like not only like the very like conservative Filipino thinking of just like, oh, like,
mhm,
do you need to go to the doctors because like you have a broken arm? That makes sense. But like how mental health is extremely, extremely important. And maybe just how the
mhm.
company culture kind of like fosters like just like really good like people relationship building skills and all these kinds of things. If you can just talk a little bit about like what it's like working there.
Yeah, I think it boils down to trusting your people, and that can break down to like different benefits. But even just being able to take time off whenever you need to, and if you're feeling sick, you don't need to like punch in or punch out certain hours. You don't have to like
Mhm.
record it. Like it's just like do what you need to do to succeed in your personal life, because if you succeed in your personal life, you're going to show up to us much
Mm,
better. And I agree with that. Like I think that if as a person, whether you're a mom or, whether you're taking care of a sick parent, or maybe you have a new dog and you are still training them and maybe they're getting sick, all of these things that are happening in your personal life, if you aren't able to, I would say, show up in your personal life the way you want to show up to your like relationships, it's going to translate very negatively in your professional experience, because you're going to be thinking about that. You're going to be unhappy at your job because you're having a guilty feeling of needing to do other things, and maybe being there for your mom or dad, or being there for your significant other because they're feeling something. So just having the choice to be able to do that, and no one's going to frown upon. It's always like, do what you need to do. We'll catch up later, or work can wait. I
yeah.
think that that's really important. And it's not just tech companies. It's not just LinkedIn. I'm sure other companies and nonprofits and other organizations that people work for can be like that. But I would say that's very key in like employee happiness.
Mm,
Um, and then culturally, like I feel like that there's still some companies that are traditionally like corporate. Like traditionally corporate means like you have to wear the suit and tie and you have to speak a certain level and you can't show emotions and you can't cry. And At LinkedIn, it just feels like you can bring your full self to work.
Mm,
That obviously depends on who you're teaming with and who your manager is. But generally, as a company, people encourage you to show up, um, and not pretend or perform to be somebody that you're not. And so
mhm.
if somebody were to break down and say, I'm not okay and my mental health, kind of sucks right now, it's not like a performative thing. Like people truly understand that this person needs to take some time, and like that sounds good.
Yeah,
And that to me is a really big deal, because I think that we already live in such a fucked up capitalistic world, and like
yeah,
we think that productivity equals our worth. And if you're in an environment that you're expected to be productive, but then people don't see you as a human being, then it's just such an unhappy experience.
yeah,
But imagine a workplace where you can do and be motivated. You can do your job, you can be motivated, you can succeed, you can learn so many things and be excited about what you're doing. At the same time, you're meeting people that you genuinely care about, you're
yeah.
sharing interests, you are talking about how maybe you just bought a new hamper and it like changed the way you did your laundry, like all these things. And
Yeah,
like that human connection can help, like from a business perspective it helps productivity, but also from a human perspective
yeah.
it it's just a better way to live life. So I would say that that's like generally the culture at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And maybe other tech companies out there that are adapting to this culture. Like I would say this traditional way of working needs to die soon.
It's
And
dated,
I'm
yeah, for
really
sure.
hope it's so dated, like needs to like that just needs to evolve, because we can't work that way anymore. We're not in the 1950s.
I was
And
like,
it's no offense to people working in the 1950s, but like it's like let's optimize for people's happiness and success. And if people are
yeah,
happy, they're going to be successful.
yeah.
So get get on board, or you're going to be left out.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things to be said with that in terms of just, I don't want to get too into it, but just, we make advancements in so many different aspects of our lives. Just even, even just thinking about like the iPhone, how that just was a game
Mhm.
changer, right? I think, or like
Yeah.
just like, being able to just mail things
Yeah.
to people. Like imagine if we were still doing things like on horseback and like delivering, like it almost feels like company culture in that sense is like that dated to the point where it's like, this isn't the
Mhm.
best way, that we're not really maximizing like how we can really make the best of this space. So it's really interesting and how you pretty much hit that on the head. And
Yeah.
kind of talking about, the current climate of everything, Conrad, there's a lot of shit that's happening. And obviously the pandemic I think has been elongated a lot more than we all initially expected, but also not really surprised, especially here in the US. But I know when we already reconnected well before, but I remember just
Yeah.
you had talked about, obviously you're now a current, a new homeowner. And I remember you were kind of like on this time crunch because I remember we didn't know what the hell is going to happen in the world. And you were just like, I need to get this place, but I need to
Yeah.
lock this in before. If you can just take us through, you're obviously still really young and you're still very like new in like your professional career. And you're also balancing like having a home and you've shared just like, that's a whole new experience in terms of just like taking care of things at like your place. What's it been like? What's it been like just like managing your home and then also just having
Yeah.
a home, like having a home of your own and you being able to say that? How's it been?
uh, it's been great. Like I think that there's definitely like it's great to be a homeowner in the Bay Area at this
Hmm.
age. 5 years ago, I knew I wanted to be, I wanted to be a homeowner. It was my vision, but I didn't know how fast I could get there. I was like thinking maybe when I'm 40 or maybe when I'm 30, but that means I need to save up this much money
Hmm.
to get there. But oh my gosh, like that means I'm not going to be able to travel. Like I had all of these conversations in my like my mind, but very lucky to, first of all, I didn't do this by myself, and I think that it's really important to clarify that so that people don't feel bad. I've had so many people ask like wow, you're so good and like you're blazing the trail for all of us. And in reality, I wouldn't have been able to do this without my parents' help, and them being able to provide a down payment from the hard work that they've put in the last decade or so being in the United States.
Yeah.
I didn't do this by myself. I didn't like save hella money and like was so disciplined and had all of these side projects juggling around. You know, when you look at other influencers talking about, I did this myself, like I think that that's so unhealthy because it
Mm,
puts so much pressure on people that are listening to think that, oh, I have to do all of these things and I have to be this entrepreneur and like I have to hustle and all these side projects to get there. Then they feel bad about themselves, like, oh my God, I'm not saving $300,000 per year. Like, holy shit, like that's not realistic. Like, it's just
yeah,
not it's not a realistic expectation
yeah,
of anyone at all. And so whenever I hear that, like I I feel really bad because
yeah,
they're for people that say that they did it by themselves. Like I feel bad because they're so insecure that they have to like say that.
yeah,
But at the same time, like I think it's doing people a disservice
yeah,
by making people feel insecure about like not doing what you're doing. So very important for me to say like, no, I didn't do any like special saving mechanism. I didn't have all these side projects. Like I got help from my parents,
yeah,
and not a lot of people are able to do that. So I'm very lucky and thankful.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, it's so damn expensive. Like, you know, you kind of have a good sense of like what you're going to be paying monthly when you go into it, but then you don't know all of these items that come up. I had no idea that water was just so much more expensive when you have your own home. Like when I was in an apartment, $20, $30 per month. And then like now it's like, oh, I have to pay for my meter and there's like a flat fee for sewage. Like, and it costs like $200 per month. And I'm like, ooh, whoa, like, hold on a minute. This is like, didn't expect this, but
yeah,
also like grateful because now I know that, you know, I have a little bit of more exposure now and experience in terms of what I should expect if I do want to end up buying a new home later. And I can also provide guidance to people who are thinking about buying a home. But overall, really great to have your own home. It feels like a burden at first, but that changes because you do feel like that what you're putting in it is an investment and you're, you know, it's your own baby and you take care of it more. You
yeah.
learn so many different skills that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. Um, but like I will say, like, you know, it's my second month here. You know, when someone says it's my third day out here, like it's my second month out here. So I'll keep you posted on how it goes, like
Yeah.
a year from now and 2 years from now. But so far it's been good. And you know, I post on social media sometimes of like the DIY things that I do. It's like, how do you create more
Mm.
space in your closet? Because I had like one bar and I'm like, okay, this tiny closet. I used to have a walk-in closet. Now it's not a walk-in closet. But how do I create more space there? Like, do I add like, so you know what we did, and what this is me and my dad, what we did was take that bar, remove it, and instead of like having one bar in the closet, why don't we do two levels and then increase the height of the one above so that you've got essentially like you're doubling your space.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, amazing. So it's funny because, by the way, on social media, I'm like, I'm doing all of these things, but I'm also not showing the times where I'm like fucking up. Like
Yeah.
my laundry, my washer, I just started seeing like a leak like a few weeks ago. And every time I washed it, it was like this like water just coming out of a pipe. And I was like, what's going on? I don't know. Like, do you call a plumber? Who do you call? Is that even
Yeah.
like a plumber's job? Like, is this what I'm supposed to do? But you know, like my dad gave me some tools and I was like, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna be like, you know, homeowner, hashtag homeowner, do all of this. It took like, you know, a tape that's supposed to like help out with leaks, and then I also had this like little tool that you take to tighten certain pipes. And
Yeah.
then I'm over here like, all right, here you go, pipe, and I'm like feeling like all macho and stuff, like just like
Oh
wow, like
God.
I'm over here working. And you know, I really thought I was gonna do it because I'm like, I got the tools that I need, and as soon as I twist that, it like breaks and like just starts water starts everywhere. You know, that's a shit that I don't really post on social media, but it happens, and it will happen
Yeah.
all the time. My
Yeah.
mailbox just broke yesterday because of some stupid like angle of where it is and my gate hit it. So these things happen, and I would say like at first it's so fucking annoying because I also just want to like focus on trying to survive in this pandemic, watch TV, play video games, read a
Yeah.
book, cook. But now I have to think about all of these things that pop up. But at the same time, the lessons that you do learn from them, and like I guess the skills, it's you know it's rewarding. So overall, really good. But get back to me in a year, it might be a little bit different.
And this has kind of come up a little bit, Conrad, but you know, obviously you know, you love video games, and we've video games and obviously watching shows on Netflix or Hulu or whatever you know you watch it on. But you know, one of the things that one of my fondest memories of you, and this is before, you know, UCLA got more serious for
Before
us.
I was EVP.
Yeah, essentially when we were still, you know, in, you know, our lower divs, and you know, we were still living on campus, and it was just different, right? It was just very different the
Yeah.
first 2 years as opposed to the last 2 years. And I remember those nights where, you know, it was like you, me, and like I think like maybe Ryan, Mikey, and James, I would think, and we were all
Those were the
playing left
cutest
for
moments.
and we would
Stay up till
play.
like 6, 8 a.m., go to Cavell Commons to get breakfast. Like, this was also before finals week. So we knew we needed to study, but we were out here killing zombies, video games.
Left for Dead, Left
Like
for Dead. Hmm.
Left 4 Dead 2. And like, you know, it was funny because I always selected, you know, you could select characters. I always selected this woman, and you guys would like, it's funny because we also like try to like look for the person that we feel most related to. And like,
Yeah, yeah.
there was like this woman, and I'm like, I'm gonna be this woman. And then like you were always like that guy with a snapback. And then like Mikey would be like this like other guy who's just like super beefy and just like can like punch other people. And I'm just like, it was just like I was like, this is literally all of us, and it was great. Like I enjoyed it so much. Those were so innocent times, and like
Mm,
if I could just like if I could take the last 2 years of my UCLA career and make it like that too, where it's just like genuine fun and, you know, relationship building, and it was nothing to do with like, you know, all of the stuff that I had to do, like,
yeah.
oh, life would be so fun. But those were so fun. I miss those so much.
I mean, I think about that too now that you say that. Just it's funny for you, it was your last 2 years that you obviously you had to do what you had to do, but you know, looking back at it, you're like, okay, that was literally soul sucking. Like you did a lot and it was really exhausting. And for me, it was like it was opposite. Like my first 2 years were really a tough adjustment. And just I was, and everyone makes fun of me. It was just like I was never
So
to be found.
what you're saying is when I left the picture and left your life, you started
Stupid.
blossoming. I'm totally kidding.
You're dumb. You're dumb. No, no, no. But I just find it interesting. Just, you know, there are those moments, especially now that we can look back. And I always think that then there's so many, like there's
Yeah.
countless with you. And there's just like, that's just one of them where I'm just like, man, like, what a time. Like, who would have thought 7 years later, like, we'd be living in this kind of world? And it's just,
I know, on Zoom. But the funniest thing is how we actually also started. I mean, we've always been close, but like
Mhm.
how we got even closer, and it's funny now to think about it, was through like, you know, right now we're using Zoom, but through Skype. Like,
Oh my
I think that we got
God.
closer, not necessarily because of our like days on campus. Like,
Yeah.
there would be a summer break, and I would remember every summer break, we would just like talk to each other either on Skype or FaceTime, whatever we were using
Yeah.
at that point, and
Yeah.
just be catching up over the summer break when nothing was happening. And you're just asking me, what are you doing at UCLA? And you're over in probably in San Diego, like just like I'm like doing all of these travels, and we're just catching up. And it's funny, like full circle, that you know, we're still worlds apart, like, or not worlds apart, we're still in California, but like we're
Yeah.
still so far,
Yeah.
but we're using another like video
That's
platform
true.
to reconnect and catch up and get closer. So it's great.
That's so crazy. I didn't even think about it like that. Like we've used quite a bit of platforms. I don't even know if some of the viewers will even know what Skype is. Like that's so dated now. Like who uses
I
that?
know. Yeah, it's so I'm just remembering like you still having your like bald, like you weren't
Oh
bald, but like
God,
you had that
no.
like cut, and then I would just like see your face like super close to the screen because obviously it's like a phone.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like taking shots because summer was always my birthday. So I'm over here like I'm like, you know, having fun. I hope you're here. Like I wish you were here because like why are you so far? And you were
Yeah.
never there for my birthdays because you were always home.
I was
So
always home,
it's
yeah.
it's just so funny.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Well, you know, Conrad,
Blast from the past.
there's so much to uncover and to discuss with you, and it's not going to be covered in one episode. But you know, I do just want to kind of culminate everything and with everything that you've kind of gone through, and you always just being that go getter, always shooting your shot, and always having, not to say you're like you plan, but like you said, it's okay. Like you know, even the hardest working people, they have to be lazy at times, right? but
I'm
you
so
always,
lazy, you guys.
you
If
know.
you like, I'm gonna say I know that you have to culminate this, but I will say like, if you're feeling bad about being lazy, do not like
Mm,
the people that like I know are the most successful are lazy as fuck. It's just finding those moments
yeah,
that you need to show up. And you know, it's a marathon. You can't always be sprinting. And there are days where I'm just in bed like all day, and it's totally fine. Like, please
yeah,
make lazy a norm. Like, I don't think why there's such a negative connotation on it. Like,
yeah.
it's great. It's lovely to just have time for yourself. So I'll say like lazy is not an indicator of failure.
Absolutely. But just the final thing, Conrad, I did want to ask you just everything you've been through and spaces you've navigated and people you've come across. If you could say, and this wouldn't change anything, but if you could say
Yeah.
anything to your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh, 13-year-old self. Okay, let me just like paint the picture. Where was she? What was she doing? Okay, so she was moving from the Philippines. Okay. So she's still a little bit like she got an accent. Um, okay. So, so I think what I would tell like my 13-year-old self is that you may not be proud of yourself right now, but you're going to be fucking proud of who you are in 10 fucking years. So keep working at it and like keep your head up.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love it. Oh, Conrad,
That was a lot of cussing. I'm sorry, but you
no,
know,
it was great.
I would say it to her, to him. I say her sometimes as a general, like I identify as he, him, but I say her because I just use it playfully.
Yes.
But yeah, I would cuss at her.
I love it. And I'm excited too. And like I said, this is just kind of the start, with kind of having you on the podcast. I definitely want to do a follow up. And there's a lot of things that we didn't, even touch today that you have so much to offer. And so, one, Connor, I just want to say thank you for just being so transparent and just sharing a little bit of your story and sharing a bunch of laughs, like always, and just always give me your time and your energy after a full days of work. I know it's a lot, and I'm just glad that we're still able to bang this out.
I've
um
lost sense of time. So
Time to go to
thank you
work.
also for chatting with me. I'm over here like, what time is it? Is it like 12 p.m.? It's like, oh, it's 10 p.m. It's still early. We still good. We
It
still
is early.
good.
That's great. But yes, Connor, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. And it's always wonderful talking to you and catching up with you and just sharing laughs and tonight, hearing your story and being able to share that with the world. So, until next time, we will run this
Yeah.
back and we'll stay in touch. But I have so much love for you. And I'm glad that you're no surprise that you're killing the game. And just stay safe and healthy.
Thanks.
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye
Bye.
bye.